Hi everyone, welcome to Teach for Canada's pre-recorded webinar. Today we will be talking about our selection process. My name is Sharon and I'm the Teacher Selection Manager at Teach for Canada. I manage all things related to the application process, and if you are thinking about going through our process or already are going through our process, you'll also likely be in contact with other team members on the teacher recruitment team, and this includes Jill and Elise, our teacher recruitment managers, our selection coordinator, Amy, or our director, Melissa. Okay, so on today's agenda, we will be covering basic qualifications needed to apply to our program, as well as our 7 selection criteria. Then we will talk more in depth about our application process itself, including the written application, the introductory interview, as well as the fit interview and references. We'll also talk a little bit about what final selection looks like. And then lastly, I will go over some additional notes and frequently asked questions. As a note, this presentation will be focused heavily on the application process. So if you'd like to learn more about Teach for Canada, the organization, or teaching and living in the North, I would encourage you to watch our pre-recorded webinar called Introduction to Teach for Canada, that's led by Jill, or sign up for a live Day in the Life at Northern School series. That's a webinar series, and it features educators that are currently working and living in the communities that we partner with. Okay, first section, basic qualifications. Applicants should meet these minimum criteria that I'm about to show you prior to applying to the Teach for Canada program. And so again, at the minimum, applicants should meet these following 4 criteria. The first is that you must be certified or certification eligible to teach in a Canadian province or territory. Certification eligible in this case means that you are currently in a teaching program in Canada, such as a Bachelor's of Education, that will certify you to teach grades K to 12 in the classroom by September 2021. You must also have legal working status in Canada for the minimum 2-year teaching commitment. We have lots of applicants who are applying internationally, who may be currently living abroad or internationally trained, and that is great. But we do need to ensure that you would be able to work here for the 2-year commitment. Third, you must also be able to attend the summer enrichment program for 2 weeks in July 2021. And that is like a training program for all the teachers in the cohort led by our teacher development team. It used to take place in Thunder Bay in person, but because of COVID, it has now transitioned to a virtual program as of last year. For this year, this 2021 year, we're unsure what it's going to look like, but either way, we will be following the guidelines, the health guidelines from the Ontario government. And lastly, you must be able to relocate to a Northern Ontario or Manitoba First Nation to teach full-time starting in September 2021. So on the screen here, you will see a map of our community partners, and this is just to provide a little bit of geographical context as to where the communities that we work with are located. You will see at the bottom indicated by a black dot, that is Toronto. So I know a lot of applicants aren't necessarily from Ontario or Manitoba, so I just want to give a little bit of context about the distance and where things are located. And in Manitoba, this is Winnipeg. So it is a little bit further north, and I would encourage you to learn more about these communities prior to applying and as well as throughout your application process to ensure that you are ready to relocate by the time you need to move. Okay, next section is selection criteria. Teach for Canada evaluates applicants using 7 selection criteria that was co-developed with our representatives from the different communities that we work with. On the screen, you'll see all 7 selection criteria. I would recommend that you reflect on these. You can pause here at the webinar to read it, or it's also located on our website. You will never be asked specifically about them. You won't be like tested on it or quizzed on it or asked to list them out. But what your interviewers would want to see and hear is how you demonstrated these criteria and values in your teaching as well as in your experiences. Okay, so the first part of the process that you're kind of involved in is the written application. You know, at this point, you've either learned a little bit about Teach for Canada and perhaps you're thinking about applying, or you have already applied to Teach for Canada. But either way, this is the first step. It's an online application, as some of you may already know. And once submitted, a member of the team will complete a review of your application, determine who will move forward to the next stage. You will always hear back within 2 weeks of your application submission, so whenever you applied. You may also receive an email or a phone call to clarify any information that is in your application, and our coordinator will handle that. So if you haven't heard back within the 2 weeks that we promised, check your spam or your junk folder first and foremost. If there's nothing there, I would reach out to us. Sometimes, unfortunately, things do fall through the crack, but we do our best to make sure that every applicant hears back from us regardless of the results. All right, so the next stage are the introductory interviews. So if successful, applicants will move forward to the introductory interview stage. Introductory interviews occur on a rolling basis. So you typically would not have to wait long from hearing back about your written application review to your introductory interview. It happens as a phone call. For some applicants, it might be a Skype or Zoom call. And that's because anyone who's located outside of Canada, we typically call them through online software just to avoid any long distance charges on either end. It is 20 minutes long, approximately, and consists of 3 questions. And they are conducted by a teacher recruitment manager. And you may have already been in contact with either Jill or Elise on the screen here. They are our teacher recruitment managers, as I mentioned, and you will be randomly assigned to one of them just based on when you select your interview to be. Okay, so some preparation notes. You will receive an email invite. And like I said, make sure to check your junk and spam folders because unfortunately things do end up there. And you would schedule your interview through You Can Book Me, which is an online software. As you can see a screenshot of it on the screen right now. That's what the interface looks like. Lastly, if you are certified in a Canadian province outside of Ontario or British Columbia, please send in proof of your teaching certification to selection@teachforcanada.ca prior to your interview. The reason for that is because in Ontario and BC, there is like a public online registry that we can just look up teachers on. Unfortunately, for a lot of the provinces, they don't have that public registry. So we just want to make sure that we have your teaching certification on file with your application. Okay, next stage is the FIT interview. So if you're successful in the introductory interview stage, applicants will then move forward to the FIT interview stage. And these occur once a month between January and June. So just depending on when you apply, you'll be choosing from one of those months. And your FIT interview is a Zoom interview, so it is a video interview. It consists of 2 30-minute interviews, personal fit as well as a Northern Fit interview. They are conducted separately by 2 education leaders from First Nations in Ontario and Manitoba. So for example, this could be education directors, principals, or teachers, people who are currently in the community working and living there, or from the community themselves. So your FIT interview is a great time for you to ask your interviewer questions about living and teaching in the North. I would definitely recommend coming with some questions and being prepared to ask those. Okay, so some preparation tips. Again, just like the introductory interview, you will receive an email invite. So if you haven't heard back in a while, check that spam and junk folder. Again, you'll be asked to schedule your interview through You Can Book Me, which is an online software. And in preparation for your interview, you will be asked to send in 3 different things. And I'll go through it now, but it's also in the confirmation email that you will receive from You Can Book Me. Every time you schedule an interview, You Can Book Me will send you an automated confirmation email. So make sure you keep an eye out for that, especially for the FIT interview confirmation email, just because it contains a lot of important information that I wouldn't want any applicant to miss. But anyway, I'll go through it now. So you need 3 things. 3 teaching references, the contact information of 3 teaching references, a lesson plan that you've used in the classroom before, as well as teaching evaluations. So the lesson plan and the teaching evaluations will be provided to your teacher fit interviewer prior to your interview so that they can review it and have it on hand during the interview. You will be expected to discuss your lesson plan during your teacher fit interview. A lot of the questions are incorporating your lesson plan or asking about your lesson plan. So make sure that you reflect on it prior to the interview and that you keep a copy on hand with you if you feel it's necessary. All right, so after the fit interview, if you're successful, you'll move on to the reference check stage. And this is the final stage of the process. Those 3 references that we asked you to provide prior to your interview, the contact information, we'll use that to contact them to complete a reference check via email or perhaps the phone. And please note that there could be a delay in your selection if we are unable to complete your references or obtain the information that we need. So some tips for a smoother and quicker process for the both of us. Ensure that your references know that they will be contacted. We don't want anyone to be unprepared or surprised. Double check their contact information. We do get emails sometimes that are just missing a period or a letter, or there's a minor typo, and that causes the email to bounce back, and then we'll have to reach back out to you and then resend the invite to your reference, and that adds on time to the selection process. And lastly, choose teaching references that are recent and relevant. We do get questions around this a lot, so I will touch upon it in the frequently asked section in a little bit here. Also, same thing applies for your references. Make sure that they are checking their spam and junk folders, especially if they're at a school board and they use a school board email address. Sometimes they will filter out external emails. Okay, so the last part is the final selection. The final selection decision is for each applicant is made based on the entire application package, from written application all the way to reference checks. And congratulations if you've made it this far. We know that it's a long process that requires a lot of time and energy, so we very much appreciate your engagement throughout the process. Please note that if selected, you'll be sent a teacher agreement via email, and you'll also receive a phone call from your teacher recruitment manager, who you likely have a relationship with at this point. You have 1 week to sign the teacher agreement to be a part of the Teach for Canada program. Depending on when in the year that you apply, our applications open in November and end typically around May. That's when they close. So if you apply closer to May and say your references take longer than expected and it's a little bit of an extended selection process, you may be selected closer to the summer enrichment program in July. Hopefully not, but if that does happen, you may have less than 1 week to sign your teacher agreement, but it shouldn't be too much of a problem, so as long as everything works out smoothly and on time. After final selection, if you sign your teacher agreement, you agree to be a part of the Teach for Canada cohort this year, the next step is matching with the community partners that we work with. And that's when you get matched with the First Nations and know that where you're teaching and other details like that. But your recruitment manager will talk to you more about that. It's a little bit out of the realm of selection and out of my portfolio at this point. Okay, a few additional and very important notes. I've said this multiple times, so I won't talk about it too much more. Check your junk and spam inbox regularly. And something else to double check is your time zone when scheduling interviews. Toronto, our office, and most of our staff work in the Toronto Eastern time, and I know that a lot of our applicants are not in the same time zone. The You Can Book Me software will automatically convert to your time zone wherever you are, but technology cannot always be trusted, so I would definitely do that double check yourself. And we also have optional surveys at the end of each stage for you to provide feedback to us. Like I said, it's totally optional, but it is used to help us improve our selection process. And we are always very appreciative for any positive or constructive feedback. Lastly, if you have any questions at any time, reach out to selection@teachforcanada.ca. You'll become very familiar with that email address throughout your application process. The whole team, the recruitment team, has access to it. So, we'll always answer your email. We're here to support you throughout the process. We know that it is a little bit long sometimes for certain applicants, and it's a little bit can be a little bit overwhelming. So we want to be here to support you throughout that. We want to keep a very transparent and open process with a lot of dialogue. So again, feel free to reach out at any point. Okay, 2 more important notes here, very important ones. Teach for Canada is committed to providing an accessible application process to all applicants. If you require accommodations at any stage of the process, for example, audio-visual support or typed interview questions, reach out to us at our email. And this is, of course, optional, and it will not impact your selection in any way, but we want to make sure that we can do whatever we can to accommodate our applicants. And as an organization that works with First Nations, we are committed to the recruitment and selection of Indigenous educators. So we encourage Indigenous applicants to self-identify in their teacher application. Okay, moving on to the last section of the webinar today, it is the frequently asked questions, the FAQs. The first question that we often get from applicants is that I don't have recent teaching references or teaching evaluations or a lesson plan. Do I need to provide these things during the fit stage? And can I provide older ones? So this is a bit on a case-by-case basis. Generally speaking, references should be from the last 5 years. If you are having barriers to providing these documents, please reach out to us. We want to reduce as many barriers as possible. In most cases, we would be willing to accept more dated references or evaluations, given that there is a strong explanation for it or a strong reasoning. For example, a common one that we do get are teachers who have been out of teaching for many years, who may be retired from teaching. So a lot of the references or materials are a little bit more dated. And in that case, we recommend you to just do your best to find the most recent contact information of your references or the most recent documents. And if you feel like your lesson plan is really outdated or not reflective of your current teaching style, you can definitely update it a little bit, but at the end of the day, try to reflect on how you would have used it in the classroom. Ultimately, like I said, it is a case-by-case basis. We want to make sure we take a very personalized approach. So when you reach out to us, we'll work through that with you and provide you with whatever solutions that we have. Second question here. I'm in a different time zone. Can you accommodate that? Alternatively, can I reschedule my interviews if I cannot attend them? So we, as I mentioned earlier, have applicants from all different time zones, including halfway across the world. So for your introductory interviews, we will definitely should be able to accommodate your schedule as best as possible. You still may have to have an interview at an odd hour of the day just to make that timing work. Sometimes the time zone is 13 hours difference. So reach out to us and we can schedule you in manually with one of our recruitment managers. For the fit interviews though, unfortunately, they are a little bit less flexible. So education leaders for the fit interviews join us for that weekend, usually from Friday to Sunday or Thursday to Saturday, to do the interviews. And we schedule these months in advance to make sure that they're available. And they do a lot of interviews back to back. So they're very, very dense days for the interviewers. You'll have an opportunity to pick an available time that works best for you and you can book me. But sometimes, if it's mostly booked up already, there may be limited options. And if you're unable to attend or can't find a time that works for you, then let us know. You can reschedule your interview, but please note that for the fit interviews, because they do happen on a monthly basis, if that weekend is full of interviews already, you may have to wait for the next set of fit interviews, which is typically about 5 weeks out. Okay, third question, can I receive the interview questions prior to my interview? So we can definitely provide a copy of our interview questions prior to interviews for accommodation needs. All right, last question for today. I'm a retired or new teacher. Does my age matter? Do you recruit and select teachers who are my age? So the answer to that is no, age does not matter at all. We have a very, very diverse group of teachers who go through our program. We adhere strictly to the Ontario Human Rights Code, and all staff involved in the selection process evaluate applicants based on the 7 selection criteria, and we use standardized rubrics. So it does not matter at all, and we love diversity on the team. Okay, so those are all the questions I had for today. Thank you so much for joining me. And once again, if you have any questions at any point, feel free to reach out to the teacher recruitment team at selection@teachforcanada.ca.